Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. My name is Dr. Nkem Ezamama. And 3 years ago, I was an invisible emergency medicine physician. I was making great money, but I felt completely trapped. No one outside the hospital knew that I existed. And today, I am grateful to say that I control 153 million in real estate assets. I got invited to the United Nations General Assembly. I have board seat positions. I've created some really amazing strategic partners, some cool speaking opportunities, and premium clients. Investors are now finding me. And I don't chase anything, right? What changed was not my expertise. What changed was I became visible. And over the next 75 minutes, right, I want to show you exactly how I built a personal brand that opens doors very quietly but consistently. But more importantly, I want to show you how you can do the same thing. And this is not about going viral. This is not about becoming an influencer. It's not about it's not about a one shot, right? It's about building strategic positioning that makes the right opportunities seek you out. So that's what I'm excited about. So I'm excited to jump right in. Please feel free to ask any questions. Toss it in the comments, toss it in the chat. And at the end of the presentation, I will answer them all. Again, thank you so much for joining, and I'm really excited. So before we dive right in, right, I want to ask you a question, and I want you to really think about this for a second. If someone searched your name online today, right now, maybe a potential client, maybe an investor, a partner, if they Googled you right now, right, would what they see fully reflect all that you are, your expertise, your leadership, your capabilities? Will it reflect all of that? Or would they see like a small fraction of who you really are and what you're capable of? I want you to think about that really honestly. I want you to pause for a second and really think about that, because most of high achieving professionals, there's this kind of massive gap between your actual expertise and your digital presence, and between what you're capable of and like what the world can see. That gap really does exist. And I would say that that gap is what's costing you a lot of great opportunities every single day. It was August 2025, and I'm in the ER and I'm seeing patients, a normal day, and I get this email. My phone dings, right? And I see this email that says, Dr. Zamama, we would like to invite you to the United Nations General Assembly Gala on celebrating business and investments. My first thought was like, this is probably spam, right? Is this real? But 3 weeks later, I was in New York City at the United Nations General Assembly, and I was connecting with world leaders, building relationships with like change makers from countries all over the world, opening doors that I did not even know existed. And this is what I need you to understand, right? I didn't apply for it. I didn't know anyone that was going to be there. I didn't have like special inside connections. I wasn't special, but someone had been watching my LinkedIn content for months. They saw my journey. They saw my expertise, right? They saw my story and they thought, maybe she needs to be there, right? Maybe she has something to say. That opportunity found me. And that's what a personal brand can do for you. One that is created strategically. It works while you sleep. You kind of position yourself clearly so that the right opportunities find you, the right people think about you first. But 3 years ago, I was completely invisible. Nobody knew me. And so it's really amazing to sit here today and kind of share these experiences with you. But it's more than that, is how can you get in this position and build something amazing for you? So let's get started. Now I'll show you kind of where all of this started for me. 3 years ago, right? I was just practicing in the ER and I was making good money, $300,000 by every conventional measure, right? I had made it. I was, at that same time, right, I had started building a real estate portfolio. I had knowledge, I had expertise, like I could really help a bunch of people. I was capable. I was qualified. And you might be sitting here thinking that that thing that you're doing right now, you are capable, you are qualified. And I was building something meaningful, but I was completely invisible. Nobody outside like my immediate circle, nobody knew I existed, right? I didn't have a platform. I didn't have a digital presence. I had no leverage. I had no way to kind of amplify the impact that I had beyond just the people that I physically interacted with. And I really wanted more than that. What bothered me the most was that I knew this, and I knew that opportunities were like passing me by every single day, right? Potential investors who would have been perfect for the deals I were creating, they were finding other people, they were finding other groups to invest with. Speaking opportunities where I knew I had a story to share, it was going to other people, but they didn't have as great track records as I did, right? All these partnerships were being formed because people had positioned themselves online and I was hidden. Nobody knew me. I was too afraid. Thinking about like podcast invitations, about sharing my story, they were going to other people. I was capable of so much more, but nobody knew I existed. And I was thinking, there has to be a better way, right? How do all these successful people actually get these opportunities? That's what I was thinking. And because I was thinking that, right, everything changed for me. I was having coffee with one of my mentors who had built a very successful business alongside her career. And she said something that like stuck with me. She said, in 2025 and 2026 and beyond, if you are invisible online, you are invisible, period. And she continued and she kind of said that it doesn't even matter how qualified I am, right? It doesn't matter how much expertise I had. She said, if the right people can find you, if they can't see your work, your story, your perspective, your expertise, then they don't know that you exist. And all of that is in vain. And it hurt me to hear that, but it was so true, right? I could be the best real estate investor for physicians in the country. But if the physicians who I wanted to speak to didn't know that I existed, it mattered nothing, right? I could have this really cool, compelling story of how I built wealth while still practicing medicine. But if nobody could see that story, then what was the point of it, right? And I could have all these frameworks and systems that could help thousands of people. But again, if nobody knew, then what was it all for? And that was my wake-up call. I realized that I didn't have, an expertise problem. I didn't have a capability problem. I was capable. I didn't have a work ethic problem. I was showing up, but I had a visibility problem. Nobody could see me. And once I saw that clearly, that was the irony, right? I knew that I could fix it. And so let me show you what happened after that, right? After I fixed this problem, I built a strategic visibility on LinkedIn, right? And so that's how that invitation came. Someone was watching my content again and they invited me, right? Today, 153 million in real estate assets under management with over 140 investors. Where did most of them come from? They came from LinkedIn, right? They found my content, they watched my journey, they built trust over months, and they reached out to me and said, if you have another deal, like I'd love to jump in with you. I got board member positions that now generate additional income. Organizations reached out to me asking to serve on their boards, not because I applied, but because I had built this presence and I had positioned myself as someone who could add value to what they were doing. And now those seats are like they're producing income that goes beyond my practice, right? I've had really cool speaking opportunities at major conferences. And the most recent one was at a women's wellness conference that I got to speak at on legacy. All of this came because I positioned myself, right? In my inbox, I get podcast invitations all the time. And it's podcast hosts just finding me on LinkedIn and saying, hey, can you share your story with my audience, right? That's what this looks like. I'm getting healthcare professionals, physicians, professionals who are seeking just kind of like guidance. And it's all coming through LinkedIn. This is what is critical that I want you to understand, right? I'm the same person. I'm the same, maybe shy, a little bit introverted person with the same expertise that I had 3 years ago. But what changed wasn't me, is that I became more visible. I went from invisible to undeniable. Just think about that for you. And that transformation happened because I learned how to do it through LinkedIn, and not for vanity measures, right? Not because of leverage, but not because like all these things, but because I really wanted to really think, how can I leverage this opportunity to make an impact? And I'm going to show you exactly how. But first, I really want to ask you a question, right? And it's kind of a question that was asked to me, right? What opportunities are passing you by right now because the right people don't know that you exist, right? Because you have something really cool to offer. I want you to think about that for a second, right? Right now, maybe this evening, right? The perfect clients who desperately need exactly what you have to offer. They're looking for someone else because they don't know where to find you, right? People who could 10x your business, or people who are looking for the right partner, and you could be that person, right? They don't know who you are because you're not visible. There are conference organizers that are looking for speakers, and you might have the expertise in that thing, in that, that specific area, but they don't know that you exist, right? Investors have capital and they're looking for the right place to deploy it. And you might have the right opportunity, right? You might have the right fund, but those opportunities are not on your radar because they don't know you. And all of this is happening right now, right? And it's just, they're looking, but they're not finding you yet. And the reason why is because it's not because you're not qualified, right? It's because you're not visible. And that's what I really want us to fix today. That's what I want to understand about how you can use LinkedIn to really build that personal brand, and that can take you even further. And before I take you through kind of my journey, right? I want you, because understanding how I went from invisible to undeniable, I think it's really important. And so just stay with me a little bit, and I want to show you exactly what happened. And over the next maybe 20 minutes, right, I want to take you through the complete transformation that happened for me. I don't want to talk you through the highlight reels. I want you to hear the whole story, the struggles I faced, the things that I tried that completely failed. And then the moment that everything clicked, right, the breakthrough came, the systems I built. And you might be asking, like, why am I doing all of this? Because this is where the real learning happens. It's where you'll see yourself in my journey. And you should say, if you're sitting here thinking, or if you're listening to the replay, right, if she can do it starting from nothing, right, with zero presence, right, zero visibility, then I can do it too. That's what I want you to think about. And that is the epiphany that I want you to have as you're listening to this, because by the end of my story, you're going to understand exactly what is possible, exactly why you haven't achieved it, and what you can do differently. So let's go. It's, again, early January. I'm working 70 plus hours in the ER, and I'm saving lives, making great money. But on paper, I had made it, right? By every conventional measure, I was super successful. But deep down, I was trapped. And this is the reality that nobody talks about. It was that every single dollar that I was making, it physically required me to show up, to trade my time for money. If I didn't work, the money didn't come, period, right? I had no leverage. I wasn't building equity in anything. I had no options. I couldn't take 3 months off to travel the world, and I love to travel, right? I couldn't step away to focus on another project, to even think about building Phoenix, right? I couldn't build anything that would generate income without my constant presence, right? I was building wealth for my hospital system. I was building reputation for the practice, all of that. But all of it was someone else's dream, while my potential kind of just laid dormant, laid to rest. And I remember thinking, like, maybe I could do this for the next 20, 30 years, and I would have a nice retirement account, a comfortable life, a stable career, but I would never have freedom. And there's some of you who are thinking that today, and that's why you're here, and you're just like, I want more, right? I want options. A lot of us want to build something that could outlive that ability of ours. And because I didn't have that, that terrified me, because deep down, I knew that I had the expertise, right? I knew that I could do the work. I knew that I had the potential, but I didn't have any way to amplify it. No way, again, to leverage it. And then I started trying different ways to escape. This is where some of the failed mishaps happened. I tried everything, right? So the first thing I did was I said, let me work more hours, because if I worked more hours, then I would make more money. But that also led to more burnout. I was exhausted. And there was that same like fundamental trap. I was just getting paid more to kind of be more miserable. I dove into investing, right? Traditional investing, 401k, stock market, index funds. And it's going to grow over decades, but I didn't have really any control over it. Again, I kept thinking leverage, 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 right? I didn't have freedom. I tried side hustles. I tried consulting, and I was just trading time for money in a different arena. And that's not what I really wanted to do. So in the beginning, right, when all of this, I was trying different things. I even tried posting on LinkedIn, right? But it was just random. It was like, if I felt inspired, I would toss something out. I had no strategy. I didn't have any system. And the result, I was like shouting into the void of over 1 billion people. A few people would see my posts, no meaningful conversations, zero opportunities, no traction. And that was it, right? But nothing was working. Nothing created that leverage that I was so desperate for. Nothing was building the freedom that I really wanted. And I was stuck in the loop, right? I would try something. I realized that it didn't work. I would get frustrated. I would go back to work. I would grind. I would feel trapped again. I would try it again. And I sit here laughing because at that time it was painful. But this is what I didn't understand at that time, right? The problem wasn't my work ethic again, right? It wasn't that I didn't have the ideas. Again, nobody just knew me. Nobody saw that. Nobody could see my potential. I had all this expertise and I had a compelling story. A lot of us have very cool stories. And I had the capability to touch a lot of people and to help people. But again, none of it mattered because I didn't exist. And this is when it clicked for me, right? I told you about that mentor that spoke to me. I was just venting to her, and she said, and she helped me understand that I did not have an expertise problem. I didn't have a capability problem, right? I had a positioning problem. You know, I was invisible to the people that would actually pay for what I knew, right? For the services, for the investment opportunities, the investors who would fund the deal, like they didn't know about me. And so she said, fix the visibility problem and everything else would get easier. And she was right. I had been trying to solve the wrong problem, right? I was trying to work harder, find better opportunities, create better offers, but I was trying to do that all again while nobody saw me. And this is the thing, and I'm going to share this with you because this was such a really cool analogy that she shared with me that I think made all the difference. She said, what if right now what it looks like you're doing is you are trying to sell products in a store that has no sign, no windows, and the door is locked. And she said, what's on the inside could be amazing. It could be fantastic, but it doesn't matter how good it is if it doesn't matter how good like those things are, the products, if nobody even knows that there's anything there. They just see like a black storefront with nothing on it. And they're like, well, there's nothing in there, right? Nobody knows that I existed. Maybe nobody knows that you exist, right? And so it was then that I was like, okay, I gotta be more visible. And she asked me something that like really crystallized it. And it was that same question I asked you, like, who are the people that could change your life if they knew that you existed? And I thought about it, right? And it was healthcare professionals, it was physicians, it was busy professionals, it was executives, it was business owners, it was partners that I was looking for to partner with long-term, right? The next question is, where are all those people? They're on LinkedIn. Nothing against Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, but they're not necessarily there, right? LinkedIn is where the decision makers are. It's where the deals get done. It's really where careers are transformed. And I can say that now without a shadow of doubt. That was my epiphany. I just needed to become more visible and credible on that platform. So I made a decision. And the decision was that I was going to figure out LinkedIn, right? I was going to treat it like a business project and not a hobby. And I was going to build strategic visibility. I was going to position myself clearly and credibly. And I was going to do it with this focus, right? I was going to become the authority for physicians building wealth through real estate without quitting medicine. That was going to be my story. That was going to be my positioning. What is it for you, right? Not just, for me, it wasn't general entrepreneurship or like vague business coaching or like just random inspiration. I picked a lane. I was clear about my positioning and I knew that I had the expertise. So this is what I did. Yes, I had a plan. My first plan was I would become visible. Then the second plan was I would demonstrate credibility through the content, right? I would start posting content that proved that I knew what I was talking about. Then I would build relationships. That was my third step. I was going to build relationships that would amount to real opportunities. Like I wasn't just going to be connecting, but I really wanted it to move the needle. And then the fourth step was I would create leverage that really didn't require my time. So my LinkedIn presence, like this is the biggest goal, is that my LinkedIn presence would work for me while I slept, while I was seeing patients, while I was traveling, while I was doing all those things. It was a simple plan, but very quickly I learned that it was not an easy plan, right? And that's kind of where it all came together for me. I didn't know exactly how to do any of this when I started, but I knew that this plan seemed like the right plan. I did not have a blueprint. I didn't have a mentor that was showing me the exact steps, right? I had to figure it out. And it took me 18 months to crack the code, 18 months. And once I did it right, everything changed. But those 18 months were really hard. And this is what those 18 months looked like. And I actually took screenshots from my actual LinkedIn, those periods, because I really wanted, I wanted to show you, right? So the first 6 months was hard. I was posting consistently. I was sharing my story. I talked about real estate investing. I talked about physician entrepreneurship. I talked about what it was like for a woman to like try to build something really cool. I shared stories of hard imposter syndrome moments. My results were all over the place, right? Some posts I get 50 views. I pour my heart into something and barely anyone would see it. Other posts would randomly hit 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 views. And I didn't know why. There was no pattern, there was no consistency, but I was still posting, right? I was just throwing content, you know, and just hoping that something stuck. And so like what you're seeing on screen is like my July to July follower growth, right? It was spiky, it was inconsistent, it was kind of frustrating. Some days I would grow like 100 followers, other days maybe 3 people would find me. And then other weeks, I just felt like nobody was paying attention to me. And so I had no idea what was working, what was not working. I remember thinking in August, right, man, this is not working. I'm spending all this time creating content and it's getting nowhere. And maybe I said, maybe doctors, it just doesn't work for us, right? Maybe I should focus on something else. That was my thought. And I almost quit. And I had a friend who said, you have to keep going 6 feet from gold. And then something clicked, right? I realized that, again, the problem wasn't my LinkedIn. It wasn't necessarily my content. I didn't have a system. I was just like posting random stuff, whatever came to mind. And I was doing research, but it was still somewhat random. Right? I didn't have like content strategy. I didn't even know what type of post really performed well. I wasn't tracking anything. Even though I said I was using LinkedIn to be a business project, right? It just still felt like a hobby. And I knew that needed to change. So now I had been posting consistently, but I needed to figure out the pattern. What content actually works, what generates engagement, what attracts the right people. Like I wanted to figure all of that out. And so over the next 3 months, right, I cracked the code. And that's when everything changed, right? I've been tracking every single post. I was trying to figure out like what got engagement, what attracted the right people, what generated business. And I'll go into this a little bit later, but take a screenshot of this. But these are the 5 posts that I realized always performed well. The first one are transformation stories. So think before and after, right? The journey from struggle to success. People are drawn like magnets to transformation. They want to walk through it with you because in transformation stories, they can see themselves in it. The second type I noticed were behind the scenes. So like real work, right? Real decisions, real processes. So like when I took a picture of me at my desk, you know, trying to like crack Excel to underwrite deals, like people saw that and that built trust because I wasn't just talking the talk, I was also walking it, right? I also noticed, I didn't do this often, but I noticed controversial posts also really worked because it like challenged conventional wisdom, but you do it respectfully and people see you as an independent thinker. I'm not the most controversial person. So some of these posts are kind of a little bit more challenging for me, but every now and then, right? If I truly, I'm against something or I don't believe in something and I see something happening, like I'll share about that, right? The 4th type of posts that I saw that really worked were like educational frameworks. So like, teaching, you know, the methodology in small bite-sized ways, right? So tell people this is how to do something. This is how to get from A to B, right? It shows expertise, but as you're doing that, you're also providing value. And the 5th one, which was very hard for me, was personal vulnerability, right? So sharing real struggles, real fears, challenges, right? What that did is that it really just created human connection and people felt like you were a normal human, like they could relate to you. And that's it, right? I realized those were the 5 types of posts that did really well. And once I systematized it, I stopped posting randomly and I started kind of rotating these 5 types of posts. And it changed, right? I saw smooth, consistent, predictable growth. I was like, and like the kind of on the screen, right? That picture is a little different now because it kept going up. I would have now 20 to 40 qualified new followers every single day. I wasn't running ads. I didn't have a complex funnel. It was just me But I was like, I think I'm onto something, right? I was like, I think this is a framework that could work, right? And so most of my posts went from like 300 impressions to now I was seeing like 5,000, 10,000, 60,000. And I was like, OMG, right? And the quality of my DMs changed completely. I didn't have random people sending me ads, sending me like, oh, join this Ponzi scheme. But instead, it was like solid inquiries from investors, potential partners, speaking opportunities. They were like, okay, I see what you're doing. And I was like, I said, the system is working, right? And the beautiful part was once I got the system down, it was very repeatable, right? And it was scalable and it compounds over time. That's the one thing I noticed. And that's what I want to teach you today. Not just what to post, but like the exact system that makes results a lot more predictable. So I want to first show you kind of what the system generated. And so over the next like 12 to 18 months, right? I had over 10,000 followers and I started growing. And a lot of these people were quality people, the people in my avatar that I really wanted. They were quality connections, investors, physicians, healthcare professionals, industry leaders. Like that was who I was seeing. And then, you know, my impressions and impressions is not everything, but it was more eyes were seeing what I was talking about, right? That was real visibility every single time on every content that I published. I wasn't hoping that one went viral. I didn't care about that. I was just showing up every single day and the algorithm was rewarding it because there was value. I was like having over 250 strategic DMs every week, not spam, real connection requests, you know, just good, solid inquiries, right? I remember the first time I got my first investment through LinkedIn, right? And it wasn't day one at all. But it was a physician who said, I've seen what you're doing. I've been following you. My wife and I are ready to invest. And I was blown away because I said, this thing that I was going to give up on actually worked. And I want you to understand this, right? I'm the same person with the same expertise that I had 18 months before that, where I was just like struggling and striving and nothing was working. But what changed was I was visible. People saw my story, they heard, they saw, you know, the frameworks I was doing. I really, truly started to go from invisible to undeniable. And it happened because I created an approach to how to position myself on LinkedIn. It's not theory, it's proven. And this is actually like my life today, and it's really cool. And so I want to show you the exact system that I use. But right before I show you that, right, there are 3 false beliefs. So I've showed you what has happened in my life and how that has happened and how the growth has happened, right? But I want to show you 3 false beliefs that I really struggled with in the beginning, that I know maybe some people here are struggling with it. And so I want you to know that if you can get rid of those beliefs, right, then it's actually possible that you can do this. And so even before you see what's possible, right, think about these as the things that are holding you back. I really want to share that with you. And so you might be thinking right now, right, how did she do it? Or can this be my story as well? And so these are the false beliefs that I really want you to start thinking about. How can you get rid of them, right? The first one is, you know, like for me to get on LinkedIn, like I need to be an influencer. I need to go viral. I need to post every single day, 7 days a week, twice a day, maybe 3 times a day. I also need to be some kind of social media personality, right? For me to have hundreds and thousands of followers. And that's not me, right? That's the first thing. And then the second belief is that like, I'm not interesting enough, right? I'm not a natural content creator. Those people that it comes naturally, it comes easy. I'm not creative. I don't have anything unique to say. That's also not true. And why would people pay attention? Not true. And the third one is that like my industry is different, right? What I'm doing, the people are not on LinkedIn. My specific audience isn't there. It's too crowded. All of those things, right? These were 3 beliefs that are keeping you invisible. And I just really want to talk about it real quickly. And I want to break them down. I want to break all of them down, because once these beliefs, once you shatter them, right, then you can really think everything is possible and you can really start using this framework to really grow. So let's start with the first one. It's the first myth that I want to break down, right? I need to go viral. I need to post every single day. I need to sacrifice my privacy and turn myself into this like personal brand spectacle. It is not true at all. And this is a belief that stops a lot of like high earning professionals. This is one of the ones that really stops them in their tracks, because they see all these influencers that have like 500,000 followers, and they're posting, you know, every 2 or 3 hours. And you're like, I don't have the time. That's not me. I don't want to do that. Like, I guess LinkedIn is not for me. And this is a truth that I want you to hear, right? If you position yourself strategically, it's going to beat loud performance every single time, right? So you don't need 500,000 followers. Maybe you need to build maybe 2,000, maybe 5,000 of the right people, right? Maybe you need to build that. And you don't need to post every day. Maybe you need to start posting maybe 3 times a week, but very strategic content, right? That's what it could look like. And you don't need to go viral. You just need consistent visibility to your people, the people that make decisions, the people that will move you forward, right? You're not building a fan base. We don't want that. But you're really thinking about building a qualified network. Let me show you what that looked like, right? I'm gonna tell you about this single post that generated, this post really just touched my heart because it generated more business results in 6 months than one of my really perfect, one of my really perfect content that I spent so much time trying to work on. And I posted about my first $50,000 investment. And I posted how afraid I was. I had analyzed the numbers and I knew the deal was solid, but like putting all that money on the line, it felt so big, right? I felt like I was jumping off a cliff doing it. And most people would have, they would have waited to post that after maybe the deal succeeded. So they're like, I made the right decision. Or maybe they would have shared the highlight reel, right? And maybe one person would have paid attention to it, but a lot of people would have maybe not taken it as much because everybody invests and people are lucky all the time. But I posted it and I shared about like really how I felt about it, right? I said, my first big deal, I've done the analysis, I believe in the numbers, but I'm afraid. And here's what I'm thinking about. And this is what happened, right? That post generated over 23,000 impressions. That's 23,000 people. Think about a large like football field, all these people standing there looking at this one post that I created. I had 250 reactions from that, 154 comments. What it did is that it helped other professionals share their own fear stories. But even the cooler thing about that is that I got 18 direct messages from potential investors, physicians, high net worth investors, business owners, and people were like, man, thank you for being honest. I relate to that fear. Tell me about what you're building. I want to get involved. And that's how it started. And why did that work, right? I didn't just share success. I shared human fear, but then I combined it with like competent analysis. Like I said, I did the work, but I'm afraid. Everyone relates to that fear, but the competence, right, that I demonstrated by walking through that analysis, it showed that like I knew what I was doing. And so that combination of vulnerability and competence, it built trust faster than like 100 beautiful, perfect, polished AI posts, right? And this was what you have to hear. I didn't have at that point, right? I think I had about like 6,000 followers. I didn't have 10,000. I didn't have 20. I didn't have 500,000. And that was it, right? Hear me say that you don't need to be an influencer. You just, again, need to position yourself and tell your story and not be afraid of that. And so I told you, after tracking those hundreds of posts that I had been posting, because I told myself, I challenged myself, and I said that for a year, right? While I was doing this for a year, I would post every day, Monday to Friday on LinkedIn. I challenged myself. And so I tracked and I reviewed a lot of my posts. And again, right, I came back to these 5 posts that do really well. The transformation story, the before and after, right? Like the journey. I did a post on like how I went from being a burnt out physician to now, at that point, it was 120 million in assets under management, how that came about, right? And people saw like when I was struggling to even try to build a business till today. I shared that, right? That behind the scenes type of post that I talked about, right? I showed deal analysis. I showed a deal analysis spreadsheet of like how, how to like really underwrite a deal, my first deal, right? And I posted that, and I still post that now when we get a bunch of new connections and new people joining our network on LinkedIn, right? And I posted controversial takes. I posted but I did it respectfully, right? I said, I did a post on like, why a lot of physicians are quietly quitting, right? Why they're quitting medicine. And that resonated with a lot of people. And it also made a lot of people upset, but I was okay with that, right? Because I had lived it firsthand and I was seeing it. So I wanted to talk about it, right? And I did educational frameworks. Again, I spent the time, and I talked about like personal vulnerability, and I showed that, I posted that 50,000 investment post that I just shared with you guys, right? And that post, I talked also about like being what it felt to be an imposter, right? And that's what I was doing. That was the system, right? 5 types. I wasn't an influencer. I didn't have 500,000 followers, but I just created those 5 types of posts, and I kind of rotated them, right, strategically. And I wasn't afraid to repost the same post, like maybe weeks later or months later, because I thought it would bring value to new people who saw it. So I'm going to share with you a course, right? And in that course, I'm going to give you tons of templates with all of these 5 types of posts. You don't run out of ideas, because a lot of it is when you spend the time and you build this kind of deck, or this template, kind of template deck with what I show you and what I give you, right? You just get to customize your story. And now you just kind of get to share it with people, what you've been through, how you got to where you are. Again, you don't have to be an influencer. You just need a system. And so that is exactly what that looks like, right? And this, all those posts that I just shared with you, right? This is what it looks like on screen, right? I took snippets of kind of just my LinkedIn. And again, it's not for vanity measure, right? But it's just to show you, I did these things, and like, this is the compound effect that it gets over time. And I have learned, right, with a lot of studying and understanding LinkedIn, the algorithm really rewards consistent quality, right? So when you post regularly and it's generating engagement, LinkedIn wants to show your content to more people, right? It's like, think about it as a compound effect. And so imagine, right, if you started doing this, and each post that you now start to create is like seen by 3,000 people, let's just say, for example, right? And then you post 3 times a week, right? That's 9,000. And you post, and you do that monthly, right? That's 36,000 eyes that are seeing your content. That is visibility, and that's going to be visibility to the right people, right? And so whether it's like you want to build a coaching business, right? Whether you want mentees, whether you want to get on stage more, right? Whether you want to impact people, whether you want to build a real estate investment firm like Phoenix, right? Whatever it is, whether you're just trying to look for solid partners to start a side business in medicine, outside of medicine, all of that can come about because now you're visible. So let me wrap up the first secret real quickly. The false belief, I need to be an influencer, I need to go viral, not true, right? You just need to position yourself, and that position is going to beat loud performance every single time. So think about those 5 types of posts that consistently generate engagement. That's what you need to be thinking about. And maybe think about how often you want to start posting, right? Maybe 3 times weekly, maybe 2 times to start off with, but not random, right? You still have to build. Think about like the know, like, and trust effect, right? People have to know you. And so that involves sharing content, and then they have to like you, and eventually it's going to build to trust, right? But you have to focus on attracting the right quality followers. That's very important. And then the goal is to build like consistent visibility, again, to decision makers. So that's the first false belief. The second one is, I'm not interesting enough, right? That's the second one. I'm not a natural content creator. I don't have anything unique about me, right? My story is boring. My journey isn't special. I'll say that this belief keeps incredible, capable people invisible. And I used to be one of them, right? I was too afraid. I was like, I don't have anything cool, right? Like I'm just a normal human. And so I was like, I'm not like, I don't know, I'm not doing anything extraordinary. So I don't think my story will resonate. And I was so wrong, right? And incredible people have like really cool, amazing expertise. You have overcome really neat challenges. You've built impressive track records, and then they think like nobody cares about my story. I'm going to tell you the truth. It's 2026, right? A few weeks ago, OpenClaw AI just got released, right? And so like we are in the advent of artificial intelligence really now helping us create content. ChatGPT, Claude, all these tools can help you write posts, generate ideas, design graphics, right? So the internet is flooded with all these generic AI content. And in that landscape, right, what becomes valuable is that thing that you thought wasn't important at all. And that is your authentic story, your real journey, your human perspective, right? AI cannot replicate that fear that I felt when I was trying to invest 50,000, right? It can't replicate the imposter syndrome that you overcame, right? The specific lessons that you learned from like your unique failures, it cannot replicate that. Or like all the nuances about all your experiences, like it can't do any of that. That is like premium currency in 2026, right? And everyone can now generate content, but when you have that like genuine human experience, your story now becomes like really your competitive advantage. And I want to prove it to you, right? I told you about the United Nations General Assembly, and I want to share, because when I first got that email, right, you think my first reaction was like really excited. Actually, I was terrified. And I was like, first I thought it was spam. I thought they sent it to the wrong person. And I was like, why me, right? I'm just a doctor and I've done some real estate deals, but there are people who are way more qualified than me, who are doing really cool things, right? I was like, I'm going to sound like an imposter, shaking hands and telling people the little that I've done, right? That's what I thought. And I was like, people are going to see right through me. And I almost turned it down. And then I realized something, right? I realized that that was just imposter syndrome. And that is exactly what holds a lot of us back from building the visibility that we deserve, right? And so what did I do? Instead of being afraid, right? I shared that story and I posted it on LinkedIn. And that post, right? I just said, this is what I'm struggling with. I want to say yes. And I'm going to say yes to this despite me being afraid. And so I shared that. This is what happened, right? That post generated about 8,000 impressions, over 150 reactions. And I got a ton of comments from like other professionals who were sharing their own imposter syndrome story. And I got, even this was the cooler part, right? Because I was invited to that, right? I now started getting DMs from like conference organizers who were inviting me to speak at their events. Why did this work, right? I squashed the fear, but I shared a universal struggle that everyone was struggling with. But I shared it around my personal story. And that combination is what creates deep connection, right? People will not remember like generic advice about self-doubt. Like they'll be like, okay, fine. You probably read that on some like personal development hoo-ha book, right? But they remember a story that you tell them about how you didn't feel qualified enough, but you said yes to that, right? That makes that universal kind of truth really more memorable, and they're more likely to remember it and maybe even share your story, right? And so this is what, again, I need you to understand this, right? My story is not objectively more interesting than yours. It's not. It's just more visible. That's the truth. It's more like, and I'm willing to share it, but I'm willing to be strategic about how I share the story. And so you have stories right now that people would resonate with, like that it would resonate with thousands of people, and you're just not sharing them. And so I want you to kind of think about that, right? Right now, again, I brought up AI a little bit ago, but AI can write your posts. It can generate all these content ideas, but it's a tool. And I love AI. It's a really wonderful one, but it cannot tell your journey, right? It can't share those hard-won lessons that you have, and it can't build trust, right? And that's the gap. And that gap is your opportunity, right? And so that's what becomes valuable, is like the things that AI can't replicate: your authentic human story. I told you it's like your premium currency in 2026. And so in the course, right, I help like give you a complete storytelling framework. So how to structure your journey, how to share vulnerability very strategically, and how to turn that experience into like a really compelling narrative, because it's very important. But you also need to believe that your story is important and your story matters first. So that is the second secret, right? And so to summarize it, right, it's like, I'm not interesting enough. I don't have any unique experience. But the truth is, today, your story is like that thing that is you're going to use it to touch lives. And even though AI can help you create content, right, it can't replicate your journey, the lessons that someone needs to hear in order to be the thing that like shifts them across the finish line to say yes to you, to partner with you, right? It's that thing, it's that story. And so think about like that complete storytelling framework that's going to really help you craft your journey, like all the templates that's going to help you like share vulnerability, do it strategically, do it in a clean way. That is very important. And so that's secret number 2. And then final secret, and then we're going to start wrapping up. The final secret is this, right? It's that my audience is not on LinkedIn, and it's for tech people, corporate professionals, like my specific industry is just different, and they're not on LinkedIn. Like it's just they're not there. And then you can also tell yourself, well, it's also too crowded, right? There are tons of people that are doing exactly the same thing I'm doing. And so it's not going to work for me. And this might be like real estate consulting, like whatever it is, right? It worked for them, but it doesn't work for my specific thing. And I would say that is such an excuse that keeps people stuck. And this is why I say that, right? They have seen what's possible. They believe they have a story, but they convince themselves like my situation is different, right? It's just not going to work for me. This is the real truth. On LinkedIn, there are 1.2 billion, that's billion with a B, 1.2 billion professionals on LinkedIn. There are 63 million decision makers. Those are people with authority. They have budgets. They're ready to make decisions. 4 out of 5 LinkedIn users actually drive business decisions. That's how important this is, right? And so like, I say that to tell you that I'm already going to just like squash this myth, but I'll walk you through it, right? Your ideal clients, your investors, your partners, opportunities, mentees, people who are going to buy your product, right? They are on LinkedIn and they're there right now. This is what they're doing. They're scrolling, they're consuming content, and they're looking for you, the expert, and they're just not finding you because they can't see you. And I'm going to prove this with my own story, right? And I'll tell you about the excuse that I made. I was afraid, right? I said, real estate investors don't really use LinkedIn. So like I said, LinkedIn is like for corporate people, tech workers, people that are looking for jobs. Like LinkedIn, you just go there, post your job posting, right? I said my audience, high net worth physicians, busy professionals, executives, business owners. I said those people who invest in real estate, they're not on LinkedIn. And I was completely wrong. And that false belief is what cost me probably a year and a half of being afraid of trying to post on LinkedIn. And that my invisibility is what struggled, and I suffered from that. And this is what I have come to, and I can say this today without a shadow of doubt, right? So I don't want to say every physician is on LinkedIn, but like a majority of doctors are on LinkedIn, and they might not post, right? But they're there and they're looking and they're consuming content and they're watching. And I can say this because they are the ones who send me DMs and who respond to my DMs, and we have conversation in DMs. So they're there, right? High net worth professionals are on LinkedIn, right? So executives, business owners, like they're using LinkedIn because they want to stay connected. They want to learn. They want to explore opportunities. They don't want to miss out, right? So they're there. And like potential investors are on LinkedIn. They're just looking for the right opportunity. Through LinkedIn, right, I have found over 70 investors who have committed to real estate deals. And that is, I'm not talking, I'm not talking a little bit of investment. I'm talking significant amount of investment dollars have come from LinkedIn. And again, how did they find me? They found me through content, through my content, right? And they were there all along. I was just invisible to them. And once I became visible, right, what did I do? I posted strategically. I shared my journey. I talked with authority. I taught. And then they started reaching out. I remember I told you earlier, and I shared that story, but that physician who said, I've been following your content. I love what you're building. How can I get involved? Like I read that, and like that was my first investor. I'm like, my hands were shaking on my cell phone because I was like, this happened. I didn't do anything. I was just consistent. My audience was exactly where I needed them to be. I just wasn't showing up with where they were looking. And that is also true for your audience as well. And I want to show you like why that whole my audience isn't on LinkedIn is not true, right? I gave you the stats a few minutes ago of how many people are on LinkedIn, right? And I will say, I'm going to use my stat, for example, right? There are 1.1 million physicians on LinkedIn. And in total, there are about 7.3 million healthcare professionals on LinkedIn. They're executives, millions, investors, they're everywhere. Potential clients are just looking for your solution. So the question isn't whether like, is my audience on LinkedIn? That's not the question, right? The question is, are you showing up where they're looking? Right now, you might be listening and you're like, man, I'm kind of invisible. My competitors are building, they're generating all these opportunities, and they're captivating and they're capturing, the attention of my ideal prospects. You might be thinking that, right? And so I would say, what do you need to do, right? It's like, go ahead and like just squash this third secret. And that belief that like my audience isn't on LinkedIn, it's not true. My audience is different. It's not true. It's too crowded. It's not true, right? And I tell you that because you can look it up. You can research. You can go on Google and ask how many people are on LinkedIn. I'll say it again, 1.2 billion professionals are on LinkedIn. That's 63 million decision makers, and they're all there, but you aren't. And that shift, right, is so crucial, because the shift, like, you need to start knowing and understanding. And I hope I've shown you and proven it to you that your audience is on LinkedIn, and the data proves that, right? And you might be saying, oh, it's too crowded. I would tell you this, right? 99% of your competition, they don't have any strategy. They're just like post and ghost, or like post one, and they're just posting randomly, right? Or even not at all. And so when you become visible and use a proven system, it immediately catapults you to the top 1%, right? And I can say that for me, right? Because it just, you can clearly use me as an example, but I'm not the only example. And I'm also going to share some results that are not me with you, right? But a crowded market is actually the best opportunity, because most people are doing it wrong. And so you get to show them, this is correct strategy. This is how to be visible. This is how to show up. This is how to do it with a systematic plan. And so in the course that I told you about, that I alluded to, right, I'm going to give you a complete visibility system. How do you create content efficiently? How do you engage strategically? How do you build relationships? Because they're already there, but you just need to do it the right way. And everything that you need, right? I don't use that word lightly, to go from invisible to undeniable, because it's very true. But you have to go in, you have to do the work, right? And you have to show up. And so kind of this brings me to the final section, right? How do I actually get this system? And how do I, if I want to start implementing today, what does that look like? So before I kind of talk to you about that, right, I actually want to show you kind of what we're building, right? And so you've seen what's possible, right? I talked to you about the invitation, the real estate investment firm that I built, the opportunities that found me, right? I shared with you kind of my complete journey, how I started, where I was trapped. I didn't have freedom. I was invisible, but I knew I was capable of more. I helped you understand how I felt, like all the things that I tried and failed, right? I chatted with you kind of about the breakthrough that happened. And you've seen, like, you've been able to see why you haven't achieved this yet, right? You've been able to see the steps that I've taken, and maybe some of the roadblocks. And then we talked about kind of the mindset, right? The false beliefs that are holding you back, right? The first belief of like, I need to be an influencer, which is not true, right? The truth is, like, position yourself well, and that will be a louder performance. I talked to you about like the second false belief is like, I'm not interesting enough, but it's not true, right? Your authentic story in today's day and age is so important. And the third one is like, my audience is not on LinkedIn. It's not true, because we are all on LinkedIn, and I actually could be your audience. So this is the one question that I want to ask you. And I want you to stick around, because I really kind of want to understand the people who are here today, what they're thinking, right? And so I've shared with you kind of a complete system, right? But I only talked to you kind of a little bit about the concepts today, but the complete implementation is like every template, every script, every DM sequence, every framework, what this looks like, right? And it also even includes like just like coaching support with me, because sometimes you need a little hand holding in the beginning before you fly. Like, I wish I had that, because then I wouldn't have spent 18 months trying to figure this thing out on my own. And you can too, but it just might take you a really long time. And then a really cool like private community access, just to network with other high net worth investors. Everything, again, that you need to go from being invisible to undeniable. And so before we move into the solution, right, I want to ask you something important. And if you would kind of take a second to answer this question, I really just want to know what people are thinking. So earlier, we talked about how you're perceived online, whether you really have like a digital presence, and whether that fully reflects like what you're capable of. So now I want to talk about opportunity, right? If you look at the screen, which of these, I want to ask this question, right? Which of these is like the biggest gap between what you're truly capable of and like the opportunities that are coming your way? Like, where is the gap? So I'm going to give you 4 options. Pick A, B, C, or D on the screen. And I just want to see kind of what people are thinking. So the first one is option A, which is, my expertise is deeper than how I'm positioned online. So people who know me They like recognize that I'm really capable, but my digital presence really doesn't reflect that, right? So the people who know me know that I'm like hot stuff, but then that doesn't reflect online. So that's option A. Option B is like I have visibility, but it's not attracting the right level of opportunity, right? So I'm getting noticed, but like my inquiries are just nonsense, right? And they're not the people I want, the clients I want, the opportunities I want. So option B, if that's you. Option C is kind of like I'm respected in my field, but I'm not widely known outside of like my small circle. And I knew that very well, right? So the people who work with me, they know my value, but I don't have a platform kind of beyond that circle. And I'm invisible to like the broader market, right? And then the last option is like, I don't have a clear system for turning visibility into influence, right? I just don't know what to do. I might post occasionally. I might have some followers, but I don't really have a systematic way to convert them into real business. So I just kind of love to hear where people are, what they're thinking. So go ahead, type A, B, C, or D in the comments if that's you. So I get an A. Okay, perfect. Anybody else want to share kind of where they think they fall? I'll give people a second just to think through it. Okay. I think people are shy today. Okay, I got another A. Okay, so people are kind of thinking they have expertise, but they don't really have a positioning. So more people are A. And so if you're an A, right, you have like this deep expertise, but you don't have like a positioning. You said that kind of the people who pick A, if I can think through kind of what you're thinking through, I got another A, is that like you have expertise, but it's deeper than how you position yourself. And so I would say for you, that might be a messaging or content strategy problem, and that's fixable. So for me, right, when I first started, my problem was D. And it was like I didn't have any system for converting, my visibility into results. And that's kind of exactly what we want to try to solve for today, right? And that's precisely the gap that I would say that what we have created is designed to close. So it's not theory, and it's not just like a vague advice, right? It's a system that works. And I want to show you exactly how to think right now about how to like build your personal brand and how it's going to open doors for you consistently. Okay, so we've talked about the system, right? And this is what you're going to get. Hold on a second. So this is what you're going to get when you think about the system, right? It's everything, again, I built over 18 months, trial and error, compressed into like a step-by-step implementation roadmap. And the first one is going to be optimizing your profile. So how to optimize like every single section of your profile for really maximum authority, right? So think headlines, the about section, visible branding, complete foundation, how to build that. And then the second module is the 5-post content system. And we talked about that, right? I kind of showed you a little bit about that, but really fill in blank templates for like all the 5 types of posts. And the third module is like really strategic outreach. So the DM sequences with like really a ton of script variations on how to how to put yourself out there, like how to identify high value connections and and then also even thinking through building like a call framework and pipeline management. All of this will make sense for you when you start building your LinkedIn presence and just knowing how important that is, right? And then the fourth module, this is very important, is thought leadership. So a lot of people who picked A, who said like they don't have an authority problem, so they have really great expertise, but it's how do you position yourself? So this goes through like how to position yourself as a thought leader. So speaking opportunities, like how to get like really cool podcasting strategies, acquisitions, media positioning frameworks, how to build yourself out. So that's in module 4. Module 5 is going to be really just implementation tracks, or building a business, whether it's client acquisitions, business, speaking, capital raising, whatever that system looks like for you. And then module 6 is just going to be like a testimonial framework. So creating case study development, content repurposing, and then just amplifying your authority, kind of strategies around that. So these are going to be video lessons, over 15 hours of step-by-step training of how to get this done. And you're going to have lifetime access to all of this. That is not all. And so you're also going to get a complete, I told you about the template library. So every single template, right? Every framework that I've used, all the things that worked, that didn't work, all of that is going to be in the template library. And the reason why this is important is because there are months of trial and error, right? When you start posting on LinkedIn, and if you haven't before, you don't need to figure it out from scratch, right? Figure out the things that work, the templates that work, and then just use that and run with that, right? But that's also kind of still not everything, right? You're also going to get like DM scripts. So how to just easily send someone a message, how to kind of build, just how to converse with people, the right investment opportunities, the right partners, getting new clients, all of that is included in that. And that's really important. And then profile optimization template. So how to build your personal brand. This is really important because the first thing that people see is you as soon as they kind of log in and they see your profile. So how do you optimize that so that you're speaking to the right person? That's also important. And then like discovery call framework. So what works, right? The goal eventually is to take people out of LinkedIn and to bring them into your circle, whatever that looks like, right? So how do you start doing that, right? How do you build that call system outside? How do you build an email system? All of that is also included, right? And then when people say no, like what do you do about that? Content calendar, capital raising, like how to raise money, all of that are going to be templates that you're going to get. But this is also really cool. And this is what I really like. What makes this different from every LinkedIn course, right? You're not just going to be buying videos and left alone. I think this is actually the really cool part is like we have 12 monthly live group coaching calls with me for a full year, but it's not just me, it's the entire cohort, right? So it's not just webinars where I talk to you. It's really about like a working session that you bring. So like you bring your actual LinkedIn profile for live optimization, actual post, you're going to get feedback. Like we're going to figure out why your post is not doing well, why it's doing well, actual questions about strategy. Like if you're like, okay, I need to get into DMs, what do I need to do? All of that we talk about and we work through it together, and you're going to get direct feedback. But also you get private community access. So you're not just buying a course, right? You're joining a network of high performing professionals. And I think this is, for me, I think this has been the really coolest part because connections happen here. People become friends, deals get done, partnerships happen. There's just support, right? And you help each other and you're like, okay, how's your post doing today? Like what eyes need to see them or whose eyes need to see them? And then the final one, which I think is really cool, is you get direct access to me. So you get stuck, you need help, you need to figure out like when you start creating a lead magnet. I talk about that might be foreign to some people, but like, do you need us to review it? Do you even need us to like come up with your about section and help you with that? We have a team to do that. But more than that, you have access to me. And I think that access is valuable, but it's only available to course members. So you are not just buying information. You're not just going to buy this course and run away, right? The biggest thing I would say that you're going to get is implementation and community. And I think that price and that value is priceless. So I want to just share with you a little bit about what some of the members in the community are saying. And this, I think, to me is the most exciting, right? Leslie at Excite Capital said her strategies helped our firm raise over 30 million in capital. Moses, who is a healthcare executive, said 7,000 impressions in my first week. Direct messaging for engagements are coming in. Joe V said 1,337 impressions, 85 engagements, 30 comments, my first post. Dr. Oge said most programs leave you to figure it out alone, but Dr. Nkem walks you through everything, and that made all the difference. This is what I think is really amazing. It's different people, different industries, same system, and they're getting really cool results. So it's not theory, it's happening right now. So as I wrap up, I said we'll be out of here in 75 minutes, and I am on that. But this offer is only for people who attended this live masterclass right now. So after tonight, at midnight, the early bird pricing is going to be gone. So the webinar bonuses are gone. The deal disappears completely. It's not available for replay watchers. Sorry, guys, you should have come on tonight. But it's not even available next week. It's really for just people who attended live tonight. So you showed up, you invested your time, and this pricing rewards you. So the clock is ticking, midnight, everything goes away. Click the link on your screen and so to enroll right now, and you can join. So this is what the investment is. Because you're here tonight, webinar attendees tonight and tonight only will get it for a price of $1,750. And what's that one result worth to you? I'll say this, right? it depends on what you're building. But if one $5,000 client, that's 3 times, you've already 3x your ROI, right? And if you get one $10,000 speaking gig, that's 6x, ROI, and one $50,000 investor, that's 28 times. It's that simple. It's going to pay for itself with one result, and you're not just getting one, right? You're building a system that generates results for years. Plus, you're protected because it is 100% money back guaranteed. So zero risk or reward. $17.50 tonight only. Midnight is the deadline. The link is on the screen. The team put it up. I'd say enroll now, and let's build this really cool, amazing thing together. So as we wrap up, you might be thinking right now, like you're at a fork in the road and you're like, what do I do, right? You close the webinar, you tell yourself the first path, that's the first path. You tell yourself, you'll think about it. Maybe you'll try to figure it out on your own. Maybe you'll join later when you have more time, right? But 3 months from now, where are you? Same situation you're in today. Same invisible LinkedIn presence, same opportunities that are passing you by. Why? Because you did not take action. And it's going to other people, right? You might still be trading your time for money, and you don't have any leverage. You might be still trapped, right? And still watching other people build the freedom. That's path 1. Path 2, you enroll right now. You implement the system, you follow the frameworks, you use the templates, you show up consistently. And 3 months from now, where are you, right? You have a thriving LinkedIn presence and you're generating 3,000 to 5,000 impressions per post, right? You have qualified conversations that are happening right now, and real opportunities that are flowing, speaking engagements, all these really cool things are happening. And you're finally building leverage. You're finally creating, options. You're finally positioning yourself for opportunities that you deserve. And these are the only 2 paths, right? There's no middle ground. You either build it or you don't. You either become visible or you don't. Which story do you want to tell yourself 3 months from now? Because the decision you make kind of in the next few minutes will determine which future you get, right? So I need you to really understand something, right? These opportunities that are passing you by right now, maybe it's because you're invisible and they're not waiting for you to be ready. They're going to be going to other people. So the decision is right now. And this is what you need to do next, right? First step, click the enrollment link, sign up, get immediate access. And then step 2, you're going to get immediate access to everything, the complete course, all the templates, community invitation. The first coaching call will be scheduled, all of it. And the third step, you're going to start building your LinkedIn empire today, not next week, not next month, but you're going to do it today, right? And so the special webinar price is $17.50. After we close the enrollment, the prices are going to go up, and you'll have to wait for the next cohort. But again, you have nothing to risk because it's 100% money back guaranteed, and you're going to get lifetime access and 12 months of live coaching. So again, our team just made the link available. Click it, sign up, start immediately. But don't let I'll think about it later. Don't let that be the reason why you miss out on a really cool opportunity. So that LinkedIn empire that you're trying to create, that I've been fortunate to create, it starts now. So before you go, I want to leave you with this final thought, and we are going to wrap up. 3 years ago, I was exactly where you might be right now. I was invisible. I was trapped. Despite again, making great money, and I was frustrated because I knew I was capable of so much more, but I had no way truly to amplify it. I had all this really cool expertise. A lot of people here said they did, right? But no platform, no authority, and just the potential, but I didn't have the system. And today, right, I control 153 million in real estate assets, and I have complete career freedom while still practicing medicine. These opportunities are now finding me, and I don't chase them. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful for all the relationships that I've built, all the investors who have come in under Phoenix. It has been one of the coolest opportunities. But what changed, right? Not me. It was not my expertise. It was not my qualifications. It was just, I became visible. I went from invisible to undeniable, and I was using this exact system that I shared with you. It took me a long time, trial and error. But I would say this, right? If the system transformed my life, it can transform yours too. And not in the same way, right? But in your way, your version of freedom, your empire, whether that means really building a thriving coaching practice, whether that looks like landing really cool premium clients, whether that's getting invited to speak, whatever that looks like for you, whether that's even raising capital for your vision, right? Or creating partnerships or just simply having options, right? Or if you want to build a coaching program again, right? Like maybe finding mentees and they can come from here, right? But this system, you get to unlock all of that. And so the webinar only offer is available tonight. Click the button above, join now. And I want to say thank you so much. I'm excited for the opportunity, and I will see you on the inside of LinkedIn Unlocked. So thank you so much for your time tonight. I see there's some questions in the chat. I will get to it in a second. But again, if you want to reach out to me, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. That is the place for us to connect. Okay, I'm going to stop and answer questions. Okay. Is a replay available? Yes, the replay is available, and that you will have access to that first thing tomorrow morning. Why is CEO founder branding an accelerating trend? So this is really important, right? Why is CEO founder branding an accelerating trend? This is a really good question, because people need to see that what you're doing is possible. So it's very important right now to kind of share your story and to share where you started from, especially if you started in a career that isn't what you're doing today. So I think it's very important to be able to brand yourself, and because before people trust you, right, they need to see you and they need to know you. And a lot of that has to do with how you show up online, your presence. I asked you that question in the beginning, like if someone searched your name right now, what will they find? That is really important, because that's the first thing that our minds go to. That's the first thing that we see. So you really want to build that so that, I guess, the door will open is the best way I can think about it, because this is kind of the door is closed, right? And for them to open it, they need to see you. I talked about know, like, and trust. And I think the beginning is the know phase, and the know phase is about branding. As a UI UX designer, how to market my services and get clients? This is a very nuanced question, but I will say this, right? With marketing your services and clients, I would say it can fall into one of the ways to become visible and one of the ways to build your personal brand. So I would say if you started with something like this, right, to be able to build that, you can share your marketing experiences on LinkedIn, and get clients that way. Wonderful. Okay. So thank you so much. If there are any other questions, toss it, but I want to be respectful of your time. And I said 75 minutes, and it is 7:15 Central Standard Time. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. Have a wonderful rest of your evening.